Joining me on the channel today is Liza Wiemer, author of The Assignment, out now from Delacorte. It's about teenagers who are given a problematic assignment in school and who decide to speak out against it. Lisa is also the author of Hello. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. This is just fantastic. Thank you, Carly.
I always like to start with your journey to becoming a published author. So I want to hear about your childhood. What kind of kid were you?
Well, this is kind of interesting. I was not much of a reader until fifth grade. It was actually kind of traumatizing. My second grade teacher was a nightmare. She was the kind of person who would force students to stand up and read out loud. And I was very shy. And so when it was my turn, I'd stand up and I would speak and I would read and I would stumble over the words. I was put in the lowest reading group and I didn't feel confident at all. But then I had an amazing fifth grade teacher, Mr. Chenyan, and Mr. Chenyan changed my life. He just I don't exactly remember the conversation, but I had been very upset about an incident that had occurred between me and some other kids. And he asked me to stay back while the rest of the class went out to recess. And he sat me down and he gave me a Babe Ruth bar, which I held in my hand. It melted all over my hand. But we started talking and he instilled in that moment this passion for reading. Like, he really believed in me. And he told me about his reading program and that the person that read the most books at the end of the year was going to get some, wonderful prize. And whatever it was, however he treated me, that the fact that he gave me that one-on-one, the fact that he believed in me, that spurred me on. And that year I read 220 books, and I did indeed one. It was like a little treasure box. And from that moment on, I became a passionate reader. So I would say that for most of my childhood, I was an introvert. And then in high school, I became more of an extrovert. But I think there's a term, ambivert, which is kind of like sometimes an introvert, sometimes an extrovert.
Like, I can pretend to be an extrovert.
You pretend to be an extrovert?
Yeah.
So I learned this term. It's called ambivert. Yeah, it's great. It fits me to a T and it fits you too.
But that teacher story, it like baffles me why a teacher would think that basically traumatizing their students would turn them into people who would like to read. And I guess the same thing is like, with people who train animals or who are, bosses who are really mean to their employees. You can't get someone to enjoy something by making it a chore or making it like this scary, thing.
It was traumatizing, without a doubt. And she never should have been teaching. If your desk was messy, she would tip it over and your stuff would go flying and you'd have to clean it up in front of everyone. She would grab, cheeks and yank on them.
Oh my God.
And it would really hurt. She was a nightmare. So school was not a fun experience for me in second grade.
Oh my gosh. And so what kind of books, once you got to liking reading, what kind of books did you like as a kid?
Well, I actually brought some books with me from my childhood.
Okay.
So this is the first book I ever purchased, Mandy by Julie Edwards. People, I'm sure, will recognize Julie Edwards from Sound of Music fame. So this was by far my most favorite book as a child. It's a book about a girl who was an orphan and longed for a family. And she found this cottage and she fixed up this cottage. This book is probably now 35 plus years old, maybe even 40 years old. It still holds for me. I mean, it's still a very special.
Cool.
I also have this series of all these this style books. I have them. I still have them, and loved them as kids. Read all the
What book
classics.
is that?
That one was Little Women.
Oh, Little Women. Okay, I couldn't
Yeah. So, and I love the latest movie that was done by the female director. She was incredible.
So good.
My favorite. So out of all of them, I think. So these are all from my childhood. This is Anne of Green Gables series. And then Roots was another one.
Oh, Roots is definitely like probably one of my all-time favorite books. Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. And I remember when the miniseries came out, we were watching it on TV. It was very, very powerful. I haven't read it in a while, so it would be interesting to read it again and take a look at it. So those are some of the books from my childhood.
Yeah, great selection. I love it. And so what was your path to going from a reader to wanting to become a writer?
I felt like I had stories to tell. For Hello in particular, Hello was the story that I would have liked to have had when I was a teen. It would have helped me to feel less alone and to recognize that other people were going through severe struggles, and that I really think that the key was that for me was that amazing things could happen even though things were really difficult at home, because I had a really difficult childhood. And so for me, books were really important. They were a form of escape. But the books that I read, I didn't necessarily see me. There were not a lot of young adult novels. I was reading a lot of adult books, but I didn't necessarily see my own situation. And so Hello very much was a reflection of my own. I think there were bits and pieces of myself, and just an understanding that things would turn out okay, even though things were difficult. And so yeah, I think there was a strong desire for me to write books that would have a positive impact. Writing is not something that necessarily comes easy for me. I really have to work at it. And I'm someone who gets an idea and I will sit down with that idea. I think having a passion for people's stories made a huge difference. My grandfather was an incredible storyteller, and I loved his storytelling, and I loved hearing other people's stories. So I think that passion fueled my desire to be a writer.
It's interesting because as I've been talking to everyone, it seems like the path to actually going from, okay, I want to write, I'm going to like try to write my first book and get it published, has been about like 10 years. Everyone keeps on saying it took me 10 years from when I, first started to like, I'm going to do this, to like getting that first book deal. Was that about the same for you?
So or less? I had my first adult nonfiction book published in 1997, and then my next adult nonfiction book was published in 2005, and then there was a 10-year gap. For my young adult novel, and it was not an easy journey to get that book published. Hello was published in 2015, And now here I am 5 years later with the assignment. So
but you know, I mean, it just takes so long, and it takes so long to perfect the book, and to perfect the story, and to also get things in the right hands of the person who, like, you know, believes in it. But it's interesting, like, a lot of my favorite authors are the ones who have long spans of time between their books. Like, you know, I'm just thinking of Madeline Miller. And even Laura Ruby isn't like someone who churns out a book a year. No, I am totally not disparaging anyone who is able to turn out a book a year, because obviously, like Stephen King, I think his books are great. I like devour them. I love them. And he just churns, you know, he's like a factory. So so yeah, everyone has their process, and it takes different people different amount of times, but books are hard.
yeah, and I have tremendous admiration for those who are able to get a book out and have a discipline of, so like, for example, you mentioned Stephen King. He's extremely disciplined with his writing and his stories. But for me, I feel that I have to have something that I'm really passionate about
Mm-hmm.
and feel invested in that story. And um, so I'm kind of in a period right now of, wow, you know, what is it that I want to write next? I have ideas, but I'm not finding that drive to to um, to immerse myself in that world.
Yeah.
And so I think it has to do with the person's process.
Yeah, I think for me, like, there's a period of where I have to, like, read a whole lot, to I kind of get inspiration from reading, and then, like, there's a period where, like, I feel like I can write a whole lot. I need that input, you know, I need that fuel, I guess, that creative
Yeah.
fuel. I don't know, and also just experiencing life too. You need to experience life, and then the story starts to formulate. Um, so tell us about the day that you found out your book was going to get published.
Oh, wow. Um, you know, I mean, the assignment without a doubt was a leap of faith because I happen to have been in the small town where I found out about the original assignment when things were kind of unfolding,
Mm-hmm.
which,
Your book is based kind of on a true story of like a real assignment that was given to students to debate the Holocaust.
exactly. Yeah. So I was in a small town in upstate New York when I read about two brave teens who refused to do an assignment advocating for the Holocaust. And when I was, the article called to me, I started reading it. And in the first line, it said the name of the town. And I went, oh my goodness, I'm in this town. How did this happen? I mean, I live in Wisconsin. I'm in upstate New York. I was there for a book signing and there for book events at high schools for my debut YA novel, Hello. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm reading about this horrific assignment where students were asked to argue in favor of murdering Europe's 11 million Jews. And so what ended up transpiring is just this overwhelming feeling of, oh my goodness, how could I be in such an anti-Semitic town, and how brave these teens are. Those were my initial feelings. Obviously, you know, the town, I'm certain, has lots of lovely people in it, and people that aren't racist or aren't anti-Semitic. But this assignment definitely was an inappropriate assignment. So my initial reaction was what I just said. And then the next thing I wanted to do was figure out a way how I could meet these incredible teens. And so I made the decision that I would ask the bookstore owner if I could purchase copies of Hello, and if he would help me send these copies to these teens along with a note telling them, you know, how impressed I was. And I took 4 steps into the bookstore, and there was one of the teens. Jordan, April, and Archer Shirtlift were the 2 brave teens. And I walked in, and there was Jordan, and I said, "Oh my goodness, it's the world famous Jordan." And she looked at me and she said, "How do you know who I am?" And I said, "Let me show you my phone. I've been talking about you to everyone. I'm like so amazed with what you did." And so that led, you know, from one thing to another. And that really was the inspiration and the fuel that got me started to write this book. So, but I had just come off of years of rejection for another book that I had written. And I was fairly certain that I was never going to write another book again. After rejection, after rejection, after rejection. As a matter of fact, the night before this whole incident with seeing this article, I had received my 60+ rejection from an agent, and I was like, "That's it. Clearly, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm done." So I think, you know, every step of the journey with the assignment has been an incredible one. If people go on my website, lizawiemer.com, and scroll and click on books and the assignment, it has the story behind the assignment. Click on that, and you can read all the details about this. It's pretty incredible.
That is incredible. So one of my questions was, have you ever feared that your book would, oh, we actually didn't get to the part where you actually got your book was going to be published.
I mean, it was amazing. The 2 of us, we share the same amazing.
Yeah, we have the same agent.
Yep, Stephen Chudney. And so Stephen, I believe it was a phone call. Yeah, I believe he called me and he said, "I have a agent interested, and would you be willing to make some changes?" And I was like, "Yes, of course I would be willing to make some changes." And then and that was like 2 weeks after submission, I believe. And we kind of went back and forth via email. And I thought that I was going to have a phone conversation first with Beverly Horowitz. She's the publisher and editor-in-chief of, no, she's publisher and vice president of Delacorte Press. So I was under the impression that before there would be a deal, I would have to have a conversation with Beverly about the novel and the things that she wanted me to change. And next thing I know, I got a contract in the mail, or contract, and it was like a done deal. The offer was done. And so yeah, that was amazing. It was also a moment of relief because I was like, "Oh my gosh, you know, I got to do a really great job and let her know how amazing I am," and just so yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. And you had lots of fears that your book would never get published. And so I think that, you know, I just want to put it out there to anyone watching. Every step along the way in the publishing industry, you get rejections out of rejections out of rejections. And it doesn't mean your book is bad. It's just, you have to connect with the right people that like get what your book is about. And get
Exactly. Yeah. And I had received so many rejections, as I said, for my previous young adult novel. I spent 6 years on it.
Oh.
And it is still just sitting in my computer. And I was, you know, look, I think feeling moments of despair is part of the journey. the key, I believe, is perseverance. There is something that I said to myself daily when I was writing Hello, which is perseverance is the act of true role models and heroes. Because when I wrote Hello, there are 5 different narrators in that book. It was something that is not really common in young adult novels. And I had tried something completely new, which was free verse poetry, screenplay format, straight narration, illustrations. I was doing something so out of my comfort zone. And it would have been easy to give up. As a matter of fact, there was an incident when I was writing that book where I had sent Angie's chapter, her first chapter. Angie was written in free verse poetry. And one of my very best friends had said, this is really bad. It's, as a matter of fact, I don't think you should write this in free verse poetry. I think you should just stick to straight narration. And my reaction was, oh, wow. I mean, I was crushed. And yet in my head, I kept hearing from Angie that was how she wanted to communicate. Her voice was very much in free verse poetry, but the problem was it wasn't a skill set that I had. So I was determined. Because she told me this is not something that she thought I should do, that made me angry and actually fueled me to pursue it. So I thought, okay, so this isn't a skill that I have. That means I have to learn. Unfortunately, I lived in a place where I couldn't really readily find a teacher to help me with this. There weren't really poetry classes that I could take. And I was acquainted with a poetry professor who was retired. And I asked him if he would help me. And he said, I will give you 1 hour of my time. And that's what he did. Literally to the minute, 1 hour. But I learned so much in that hour. I learned about cadence. I learned about ending every sentence with a question so that it would pull you into the next line. So, end with a who, what, where, when, how, so that you're drawn to the next line. And that was transformative. So the idea of perseverance, perseverance is the act of true role models of heroes. That's really, in my mind, what writing is about. You have to persevere. Yeah. You are going to get rejected, and it does sting. And you are gonna at times feel like giving up. Mm-hmm. I think that's normal. I mean, I think that's more normal than the person that gets, writes their first book and gets a book deal right away and shoots to, stardom. I mean, it just.
So yeah. How do you feel about having friends, beta readers, CPs who do tell you your stuff is bad, who are blunt like that? How do you feel about that?
So I honor and have tremendous respect for constructive criticism, mm-hmm. but there's a big difference between constructive criticism and criticism. Her comment was not constructive.
Yeah.
Constructive, and we're still great friends, and she has since apologized and all that kind of stuff. But it was a good lesson, and if anything, I get to tell the story. And I love her dearly. She loves me dearly. She's a huge cheerleader for me, and it was just like a moment in time. But it's really critical if you're going to read another writer's work to give constructive criticism, You have to go into it with the perspective that you are here to uplift that other individual and do everything you can because you care about them so deeply that you want them to succeed. And that the advice that you're giving them is the absolute best advice that you have in order to help them get to the next level. So if you're going to be a beta reader, understand that your criticism needs to really help propel them to the next level. Don't argue with someone over, well, I don't really like the color blue. I'm not sure the dress should be blue. I once had someone read a first chapter, and it was written in first person, and I got it back from the person completely rewritten in third person. And my agent at the time had already thought the first chapter was great. So I think you have to also know what is needed and what are you reading for. And there you have to do it with kindness, and you have to do it with compassion. And if you're not going to do it with kindness and you're not going to do it with compassion, or you're doing it because in the back of your mind you're feeling jealous and envious and you're putting that other person down, that other person is going to be able to tell. Look, constructive criticism can be really difficult to swallow. Certainly, I've received it and you've received it from our agent. And right, not easy.
He's very blunt.
He's very, very blunt. And I think in many ways, I really respect that because he cares so deeply. He wants us to see us succeed. And so he's not going to, pussyfoot around it and just say, it's, oh, this is just so great. And you just might want to change this. And no, he's going to tell us directly, this does not feel right to me. Here's why I don't think it feels right, why I think you need to change this. And sometimes it takes you back, but if you can pause and accept that constructive criticism and think about it, there's value to it. Not that you have to accept every bit of criticism, but you also have to ask this very important question. Okay, this person is saying something about this section. Maybe I don't exactly agree with everything that was said, but clearly something bothered that person. So is there a different way that I could solve this or resolve this? Maybe it's not the way that person suggested it, but maybe there's something better or something that I can live with. But clearly it was something that bothered them or jumped out at that person so much that I need to take a look at the section. So for me, it's just a pay attention to this. Maybe something isn't quite right. Maybe it's a quick fix, a tweak. So yeah, is that how you've?
Yeah, I think if someone's pinging on something, it probably, there's something about that scene or that character or that chapter that's not working. And maybe their feedback is going to be like, this seems unrealistic. And you're like, well, you might be thinking, well, it's totally realistic because it's based on something that exactly happened to me. But maybe instead of arguing with them about the realism, look at yourself and be like, well, something about the scene is not working. So how can I revise it to make it emotionally impactful and make the reader connect with the character and increase the drama and all the things that are important when you're talking about craft. Yeah.
And what you just said is, in my mind, one of the most important aspects of becoming a successful writer, because if you can do that, when a person locks in and says, you know, I'm right and this other person is wrong, and they won't look at it and they won't uh, welcome that kind of advice, I think it's really hard for that person to be successful.
Mhm. Yeah, I do tend to preface all my feedback with this is just one person's opinion, and I come to things with my own lens, right? So I feel that this part is not working, this aspect is not working, or here's a suggestion for a different way to approach this sentence, this paragraph, whatever. But in fact, I just told someone, like, they're like, oh, I think you're not getting the voice that I'm speaking with. And I'm like, yeah, it could be that I'm seeing this from a completely different lens. So I could be completely wrong here. But take what works, delete what doesn't. But I think as a writer, you should definitely, if someone's paying something, there is something there that needs to be addressed,
Yeah.
whether their solution is the solution or whether it's something else.
Exactly. And you don't have to take, you know, every bit of constructive criticism from other people, or from one particular person. But, you know, there's that, I think it was Stephen King who said, if two people say something, definitely pay attention.
Yeah.
And if only one person says it, then, you know, think about it from your own perspective. But again, it's, where I see a concern is only when a person refuses to accept any kind of advice. Mm-hmm. And so they send it out to people, but then they're unwilling to make any changes. Thankfully, that kind of person is a rare person.
Yeah, well, it's hard to make it forward in this industry, which is all about people telling you that your stuff needs to change if you're not going to be making any changes.
That is so true.
Like every step of the way, it's someone telling you you need to change your thing. I don't think there's any author who can survive and not be open to changing their thing, their vision.
Yeah.
This brings us to a good question. What misconception did you have about publishing prior to becoming a published author that has now changed?
I think that, I don't know if it's a misconception, but I think that one of the things that I've worked really hard on is not comparing my journey to other people's journeys, because everyone's journey is unique and there may be some common threads, but the moment you start comparing, it's going to be tough, I think, because no matter where you are in this journey, whether you are in the process of writing, or whether you're searching for an agent, or whether you're on submission, every step of the journey is different. So I think that it is helpful to hear other people's stories, but to go in it and just recognize that even though you will share, you know, some common steps and common experiences, it is your own journey, and not to have those expectations, and just to kind of enjoy the journey. I also had, I think in some ways, perhaps the expectation that if I wrote a book, edited the book, got outstanding feedback, that would lead to somehow finding a home for that book. And that just, you know, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that I had to let go of the fact that you can pour your heart, your soul, everything into a book, and that it very well could go absolutely nowhere.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that in the future there might not be, there may be a home for it. That's possible. But it's letting go and enjoying the process a little bit more instead of setting those expectations sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And with each book, you do learn a whole lot. Even if the book ends up being shelved, you learn something while you're writing that then you could apply to the next thing that you write.
Absolutely.
That's why writing's like definitely a process. So this is a good time to pitch your book. Tell us about the assignment. Tell us why people should pick it up. Tell us what it's about.
So the assignment is about two teens who receive in their history class an assignment asking them to debate the merits of the final solution. So the final solution was Hitler's plan to exterminate Europe's 11 million Jews. And there was a conference called the Wannsee or Wannsee Conference, depending, I hope I pronounced the German correctly. Mm-hmm. So this conference brought 15 Nazi leaders together, and they talked about what they were going to do with Europe's Jewish problem, and how were they going to eliminate the Jews. So the so-called debate was, should we sterilize Jews? Should we put them in work camps and ghettos? Or should we just exterminate them? There was never really a debate. It was always in the mind of Hitler and the majority of these Nazi leaders who were in charge of this Jewish question to exterminate the Jewish people. So, but what this conference did was it brought these individuals together in order to get everyone on the same page. And so in this history class, these students are told to pretend that they're Nazis and to debate whether or not sterilization, work camps, and ghettos, so in other words, work them to death or just exterminate the Jews. And the point is that there was never a debate. This is not a debatable topic. Yeah. You should never, ever, ever put students in a position to sympathize with perpetrators or to look at their arguments as if there's validity to them. So I want to be really clear that there is absolutely nothing wrong with learning about the final solution and learning about the Holocaust and learning about what the Nazis thought about. But it's a completely different story when you're asking students to sympathize with that perspective. And even though the teacher said, oh, this is abhorrent and what the Nazis did was awful, by saying that you should go out there and you should look at the Nazis' reasons for this and then pretend that you're a Nazi and present these positions, that automatically creates an environment where there is a possibility that those perspectives are legitimate when it's not. So I think this novel is really important for a number of reasons. One, it highlights the history of World War II and the Holocaust, but it also connects to what's going on today. And these assignments are much more common than we could ever imagine. I have been contacted by people, messaged, people have tagged me and said, oh my goodness, did you see this assignment? And it's shocking to see that educators would give assignments that promote racism, that promote a anti-Semitism and hatred and bigotry. And I think the vast majority of these educators, that's not their intention. They're misguided and they're thoughtless. They thought maybe that they were thinking outside the box and being creative. But unfortunately, because of the way the structure of the assignment and how they presented it, it's presented in a way that is inappropriate and oftentimes traumatizing to the students who are in a position, not in a position of power, to say that this is wrong. And so it takes tremendous courage. And that's what this novel shows, is that our students need role models to have that kind of courage to speak up when they see an injustice. And it's not just with an assignment like this. It could be in a situation of bullying. It could be in a situation when it comes down to a belief system that they have and they feel very strongly about, that connects to injustice. And so I would hope that students will pick this up and adults will pick this up, and they'll find the courage to find their voices, because our voices matter and we cannot be silent in the face of hatred and injustice.
Mm-hmm. I think it's super relevant because especially, you know, the Gen Z teens right now, they're so they're so intelligent, like they're so educated about politics, and they're so interested in politics and also social justice. And so when millennial teachers and Gen X teachers, like, you know, say something overly simplistic or present some information in a problematic way, I just love how the Gen Z students will like dissect what you say and tell you while you're wrong and give you footnotes and like, okay, refer to this discourse, and then you're like, whoa, okay. So if there's any generation of teens, I feel like, who can educate us about things, it's definitely the Gen Zs right now. They are amazing. So what's your favorite step when it comes to writing? Is it drafting or revising?
I think it depends on the moment for me. I don't love one over the other. I think there are moments when you have these, I think my favorite moments when it comes down to writing is when you find the exact word that just makes the sentence, or a scene that it grabs at your heart, and it wasn't part of your plan at all, but it just comes to you. And it's these moments of inspiration. And you know, writing is a solitary experience. So when something amazing like that happens, I celebrate and I will like go, yes, this is so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I cheer myself on. And I feel like I need to do that because, and I will say that out loud, because that keeps me going and that motivates me. And it's those gem of moments that it's just like, wow, I don't know where that came from, but this is exactly what this book needed. And I'm so excited about this and I'm so proud of it. And that can happen in the drafting process and it can happen in the revising process. So I think all of it for me is discipline, and it's sitting down and it's doing the work and recognizing that it for me is a challenge, that it doesn't always come so easily or so simply, but that if I'm willing to do the work, something amazing can come out of it.
Definitely. And so are you a perfectionist or a chaos artist?
So I'm a reformed perfectionist. perfection is not something that anyone can ever attain. And that took me a long time to realize that there was no way I was ever going to succeed and reach that kind of level. And I had an amazing moment in my writing process that really had me recognize that I needed to let go of perfection. I had turned in a manuscript to one of my former agents, and I was feeling a little uneasy about it. So instead of like letting it go, I opened up the file and started reading through it. And I started seeing little mistakes, you know, a typo here, a typo there. And I started getting really frustrated, like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? You know, I read this out loud. How did I miss this? And I got to a section where, let's just say it was like on page 179. And I typed SHIT pockets. I left out the R in shirt pocket. And I was mortified. I was, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And I contacted, you know, that other friend that I was telling you about. And I contacted her and I told her what I'd done and how awful it was. And oh my gosh, my agent's gonna read this and what is he gonna think? And she burst out laughing. And she's like, you have, you know, 70,000 other words. Why are you worrying about this one? Well, I was worried about it. So I typed him, you know, an email and I said, you know, dear Stuart, I just wanted to let you know that on page 179, you're gonna, you know, find this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. He didn't even write back. You know, it was like no big deal. And so I have embraced my shit pockets. Because we all have shit pockets and we have to embrace them. And we have to accept that there's no such thing as perfection. But there is one thing that each one of us can do every single day and be successful at. And that is that we can each strive to do our very best. Mm-hmm. So some days that means just thinking about what you're going to write and not getting anything on paper. Some days that's going to be 200 words. Some days that's going to be, you know, 2,500 words. But if you go into it without being unkind to yourself, and I believe seeking perfection is unkind and actually cruel. Mm-hmm. But if you go with the attitude that I'm going to do the best that I can today, because we all know we get interruptions, things happen, and we can't necessarily achieve even some of the goals that we set for a day. But if we look at it and say, you know what, under the circumstances, I really did the best I could, and that is enough. Mm-hmm. And I think that will make you a much happier person than being a perfectionist. Embrace your shit pocket.
So do you have a huge ego, or are you humble and demure?
You know, it's hard to look at yourself. I would hope that other people would say that I'm a humble person. I believe that this world has infinite possibilities, and that this business is hard enough that to go in and be envious of other authors or to not lift each other up, that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to be the kind of person that lifts other authors up and cheers them on. Their success does not diminish any kind of success that I could have. And so we have to celebrate, in my opinion, with each other. And it's something glorious. because no one else is going to write the book that I'm going to write, and I'm not going to write the book that someone else is going to write. And they're adding something really special and amazing and bringing their experiences to the world. And to me, it's such an honor to be able to read someone else's incredible book and incredible words, and be in awe of what they've done and what they've accomplished and what they've just, their journey. And so I guess it's not about ego or being humble, though I hope to be humble. Mostly I want to celebrate everyone and wherever that person is in the journey, and do whatever I can to help them, and do whatever I can to be supportive of others.
Sounds good. Are you a morning writer or evening writer?
So it depends on the process for me. When I am writing a book, I completely get entrenched in a novel, and I can write from 3 in the morning till midnight.
I love it.
And I go into that world, and I live in that world, and everything else, yeah, I'm a part of that world. I've got to, make dinner, and I interact with people, but for the most part, I'm entrenched in that world. I have a great deal of stamina to be able to sit for a long period of time and be focused in that way. So it really, that's my process. I know other people that if they've been sitting for an hour, they got to get up and they're done, or they are put in a position where they're working a full-time job, and so they have to write early in the morning or early at night. I am very fortunate that I'm able to write full-time if I choose. And, I do other things, like some freelance writing and things like that, but it's not right now in this period of my life, I'm not teaching full-time. And so I can adjust my schedule and really stay focused. But no one should feel badly about their process. My process is not going to be your process. And if it works for you, be happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a pantser. The combination, the one. So I will, before I sit down to write a chapter, I will plot the entire thing out before I even sit down. I have an idea before I start the novel of, beginning, middle, and end, where it's going to end up. But I also allow for the unexpected to happen and to go with the flow. I find that if I start before I sit down to write, whatever time of the morning it is, if it's 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 6 in the morning, if I have gone through and talked to my characters and asked them questions and discovered from their perspective what should take place within this next chapter, that I have an outline, a clear outline of what I want to say. But I love it when the unexpected happens.
So do you start with character first or plot first?
I'll have a general sense of the plot, but I definitely am character driven. So going back to what I was saying about my grandfather and the fact that he was an amazing storyteller, I love interviewing people and finding out their stories, and I will ask strangers, if I meet someone like, oh, I'll just ask them questions. It's something I enjoy. I enjoy hearing other stories. So I will ask my characters, questions about their life. And I personally believe that an author should know absolutely every possible detail about their characters, their worst secrets, their desires, their hopes, their dreams, their traumas in childhood, their relationship with best friends, with their family members. And that comes, at least in my process, by asking my characters questions. So I spend a lot of time talking to my characters, and I will actually take a blank notebook and a pen and just start writing and really delve into those motivations. And rarely does a character change from when I first get to know that character to, the finished product. And there is no way that we can know ourselves or a best friend or a parent or a sibling as well as we know our characters. It's impossible. We can't even know ourselves that well because we don't remember what happened to us when we were 4 years old unless we have a photographic memory. So, but it's completely different with your characters. And I think that is what helps me as a writer, is doing the work ahead of time to really understand who these individuals are and what drives them and what's important to them. And I think because I write, the assignment is also written from multiple perspectives. And so it is very much character driven.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's interesting how some of the most important things in a book are the things that happen before the book starts.
Exactly.
And that's what's really cool. So what was one of the most helpful revisions suggestions that you've gotten along the way?
Don't be afraid to cut, without a doubt. Don't be afraid to cut. Also, that every single word that you have in your manuscript must have muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It must have a purpose. You must constantly ask yourself, why is this here? Why is this important? If it's not moving the story forward, you need to cut it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's actually, it's easier to say this than to do it. But I think it's really important to go through with those lenses and be very critical. I once heard Jojo Moyes, she said that she never regretted anything that she cut. She only regretted what she didn't cut. Yeah. And that was something that really struck me. So, yeah, it takes work. And it also, you have to detach yourself a bit from your work too. Because I am someone, I think, at times where I'm really attached to my work and I'm attached to my characters and I care deeply about them. They feel in many ways real to me. Mm-hmm. So to cut a scene or to cut something that seems important can be difficult. But if it doesn't have muscle, or if you say it later but in a different way, I think the most important question also that you need to ask yourself as a writer is why? Why is this here? Why would this character do this? Why do I think this is important? Why is this going to have any significance? I have a whole list of whys, and I will actually give you a link that you can post.
Oh,
And it's something that I think is something that I put together to help authors or to help writers in that process. So hopefully that will make a difference for those revising.
definitely. Oh, thank you so much for providing that. Oh, would you ever like to be famous?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think in some ways I want to be just, I don't want to say this in a way that's going to sound trite. I think that I want my work to have an impact. I want my work to be widely read and to make a difference in this world. That's why, one of the reasons why I wrote the assignment. So, but there's so much a part of the journey that we don't control.
Mhm.
And so I guess I'm the kind of person that looks at life this way. Work on what you can control and let go what you can't control, and just see where it takes you. And so would I love if this book is taught in schools around this country and around the globe? I would, because I think it adds value and can make a difference for young adults and for adults. And I say that with humility, that if I am so blessed to have that amazing opportunity to make a difference in that way, I will embrace it and I will absolutely welcome it. But I have no clue where this, path, where this journey is going to take me. So I don't know if the term would be famous. I don't know. I guess I'll just have to see where things go. I'm going to give it my heart and soul and everything that I can, and I'm going to do my best. So
If you if you could have any non-supernatural quality or ability, what would it be and why?
I would love to be the author who has that writing comes easy, or more easy than it does for me. I find that writing can be really challenging and hard. So I would love to be able to sit down and in a month have an amazing first draft and then revise it and like done. So, because really it takes me a long time. And so, yeah, I wouldn't mind giving that a shot.
Sounds good. What are you working on right now?
So, I just finished a picture book,
Oh, cute.
and I had written a version of it over 20 years ago, and it was originally set like in the 1920s, and I knew that I always wanted to modernize it and set it in modern time, but I didn't quite know how to do it. So about 3 or 4 months ago, I picked it up again, and I revised it and I revised it and I revised it. And I'm so happy with the fact that it is now set in modern day. And I'm really excited about this picture book. So there you go. That was
Yeah.
probably a 25-year process. So let's see. We'll see where that goes.
Well, I'm excited, and Thank you all for watching. You can check out, I'm going to put all of Liza's links down below, but definitely check out the assignment. It's available now, and also her previous novel, Hello, which is available. And thank you so much for being on the channel, Liza.
Thank you so much, Carly. I love your interviews. They're always great. And thank you so much for having me.